What's it like running a record company in these days? Must be
Well, it's shockingly. Sorry, I'm just going to switch my phone off.
all right.
It's shockingly productive. We've been we've been working remotely, for about a year now, and we slipped into it really easily. I mean, of course, there have been some problems with. I mean, I'm not putting all the live side to one side, which is
That's my problem, not your problem.
Well, it's our problem as well because touring helps promote and lengthen the life of a release. A few projects have been kind of held up because they require musicians to be in the room together and travel, and which is a real shame. But we've been doing a lot of. I mean, a lot of our artists have got their own studios of some shape or form.
Yeah.
We've been doing a lot of remote mixing as well, which has worked really well.
Cool.
So,
yeah, it could be worse, I suppose, from a record company point of view. What do you think about this announcement yesterday from SoundCloud about this user-centric model for artists to go and bypass record companies completely? That's kind of interesting. Have you seen that?
I haven't actually seen it, but is that different from just artists putting their music up on Spotify? Is it different?
Oh, totally different. Yeah, right. Because nearly all the royalties go direct to the artists, as opposed to Spotify. As you know, most of it goes to the.
I mean, listen, I've always been in favour of people self-releasing if that's the way they want to go.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I started. I self-released.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think everybody. There's so many different routes to releasing records, and it just depends on what suits the people who the band or the artist best, really.
You are quite unusual in terms of record labels, in as much as, I mean, you think like an artist, right? So you're not just going. I hate to say it, but a lot of the major labels rapacious, as far as I'm concerned, and that's a good word, isn't it? But they I always get the impression that you genuinely love and care about the artists on your label as a representation of your kind of curatorship, and you always get them decent deals. And is it true? I have to ask you this question: that you don't have a written contract with Vince and Andy from Erasure? Isn't that fucking excuse? You're allowed to swear on this podcast if you want. I know you don't very much. I do.
Oh, I do.
I mean, what an amazing thing in today's world that there's such trust exists between an artist and a record label.
Well, we've been working together for what year are we in? 21? For like 41 years now.
Shit.
And at the beginning, none of our artists had contracts. In the first 5 or 6 years of music, none of the artists that we worked with had contracts. They were all on profit share deals.
Like rough trade deals, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
So just to explain that to the listeners who may not be so familiar, it's basically 50-50 split after costs are covered, right?
It's 50-50 split of the profit, really. And that suits everybody quite well, I think, and it's fair. It's very fair. I think one of the reasons that I like it, which works for some artists better than others, because it's a profit share rather than a royalty. The amount of money you spend on certain things goes against that profit.
Yeah.
So you can work with the artist on that. You consult the artist, and they're much more involved with the process, which is something that I felt was very important, certainly at the beginning.
It's very interesting that, Daniel, because when we started with working in the early days of Virgin Records, we made it our absolute intention to work in tandem with the record label, rather than regarding them as having a boss man and slave relationship.
Yeah, it's a partnership. Yeah, it's much more of a partnership. Now, that doesn't suit everybody. Not some artists just don't really want to get involved in that particularly. They just want to know, if I sell 100 records, I know I'm going to get exactly this amount, which is a standard royalty deal.
So do you discuss the marketing spend? I mean, I've released records on your label, so I think I know what the answer are. I mean, it's more for the listeners, really. Do you discuss marketing spend with the artists?
Yeah, if it's a profit share deal. I mean, we do fewer profit share deals these days for various reasons. But we still do. If an artist wants to do a profit share deal, we'll do it.
Right.
If it's not a profit share deal, the marketing budget doesn't affect their income. Obviously the recording costs do.
Yeah.
But not the marketing budget. But yeah, of course, if it's a profit share deal.
Yeah. It's just interesting because whilst you make it sound very elegant and swan-like on the surface, it's actually, as far as I'm concerned, it's quite unusual for a kind of medium-sized to successful label to go down that path. And it's really, if you believe that an organisation is an embodiment of the person who leads it, I believe you are the perfect example of that. Listen, I'm your biggest fan, you know that anyway. So I am definitely always evangelising about Mute and what great people you all are.
I mean, I think semi-consciously, subconsciously, or whatever. It's a label. I wanted Mute to be a label that I wanted to be. I would have liked to have been signed to.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think about it in those, clear terms, but that I realised that, I wouldn't want somebody to say, I don't know, rewrite the lyrics because it's not going to get on Radio 1. You know what I mean, or whatever.
Exactly. What happened when you sold Mute, didn't you? Or rather, tell me how that worked. I'm still kind of fascinated by it. It was EMI, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of a story behind it, a longer story. And it's my, I take responsibility for that. I mean, we had during this sort of late 80s through to the mid 90s, we were hugely successful. And we had a big staff in those, because to remind the younger members of your audience who might be, this is before the internet.
We don't have any younger members, Daniel.
Okay. Well, to remind your older members,
I'd like to. We don't.
Before we used to do all our international. Okay, so we worked with around 40 different countries.
That's a lot.
And they all pressed locally because records still sold in those days, and so you had to have 40 pieces of artwork. You have to have 40 master tapes. You had to have 40 photo sessions. It was about half the people who were working at Mute at that time were shipping stuff, basically.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Anyway, we and just around the time of Britpop, which was kind of very counterintuitive to me, Britpop, because for me it was very backward looking.
Yeah,
I agree. It was forward looking. I mean, I'm not. There were some good songs and there was some good bands, but it just wasn't what we were interested in.
Yeah.
And the media was, basically radio and press were totally obsessed with Britpop and really weren't interested in anything else apart from, there might be a techno column or something. And we kind of stagnated a bit. And the artists who were successful, like Depeche and Erasure and Nick Cave, were releasing records less frequently, which is fine. As they became more successful, their touring became more successful, and they would, all those things, but, all for good reasons. But I think I wasn't quick enough to really realize the impact of that on the company, because we maintained a huge staff. And so we had some, we got into some financial, I would say there was a situation that could have threatened the company in some way, okay? And obviously I didn't want that to happen. And I tried to do, against my better judgment, against what I would have normally, I tried to do an international distribution deal.
Right. But
Mute was perceived at that time as being a cold label. And,
as opposed
to, and it was hard to do. And then just as things were getting quite desperate, well, not desperate, so a bit extreme, difficult, Moby's play was released.
Oh, right, there you go. I guess he out of jail.
And it took a year to really take off before it was the fourth single that actually kicked it off,
Right.
And all of a sudden I was a genius, and
you've always been a genius with music business work. I should imagine
when I say genius, I'm doing it with
Yeah. I should imagine the sync alone on the album was phenomenal, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was phenomenal. And it was like the cavalry coming over the hill. It really was. It really felt like that. And all of a sudden, everybody wanted to do something with us. Okay, so I took a view, rightly or wrongly, that I didn't want to go through that pain of the previous few years again. And if we could get a deal where we had artistic freedom and we basically ran the company in another company, then I would consider it, And Emmanuel de Bourtel at the time, who you probably know, well, he'd run Virgin France for many years, and one of our licensees was Virgin France. But by that time, he knew Mute. I was a big Mute fan and understood what we were doing. But in the meantime, he'd become the head of Continental Europe for EMI.
Right.
And he gave us a deal, which was financially great, but more importantly, was creatively great. We were left alone to do what we wanted.
Wow.
They just they'd look over the books once every 6 months. But but then he was he's a maverick character, which didn't really fit into the corporate.
Not to EMI, no.
And especially because, it's a long story, but his new boss, him and his new boss fell out basically, and he left. And then I wouldn't say things got worse because we had a contract and things were very tight in the contract, but the vibe, the atmosphere, and EMI were going through terrible problems as well at the time, so it was a bit of a mess. But that's why I sold it to protect Mute. But I wouldn't have done it if we didn't have the kind of control that they gave us.
I don't understand. Can you explain something to me? Because it always mystified me. When you sold it, I remember reading about it in the in Music Week or whatever. When he sold it, I thought, Daniel's a very good businessman here, because if he's got all this creative freedom, what are they buying? If you were not. Right, the reasons why you sold it is because you were in cash flow difficulties, presumably because of the amount of staff that you got. But if it wasn't making money and it wasn't forecast, did they think it was forecast to make loads and loads of money for them, presumably?
Well, they bought the catalogue, which had lots of records on it. They bought... if there were contracts, they bought the contracts, but they also bought the loyalty of people like Vince.
Yeah, of course.
In the sense, although they didn't buy his loyalty to them, they recognized the loyalty that and and of course they did the distribution where they made quite a big margin.
Oh, right.
Really, they did the worldwide distribution, so that gave them a healthy margin as well. So
so they crunched the numbers and it made sense to them.
Whether I made money for them or not, I have no idea.
But you sold it for a lot of money and you bought it back for a fraction of that, didn't you?
No, well, I didn't buy it back. Buying it back, oh God, it's the fucking machinations of the music industry. I left there. I did it. I decided, and there was what's their names? I forgot their names now. I bought EMI, and that was a nightmare really, because EMI were in a lot of trouble, and these people didn't really know anything about them.
I think it was Beelzebub, wasn't it, or something? Is that
it was the Terra Firma?
Terra Firma, that was it. Yeah,
who were basically, they owned. They owned the Odeon cinema chain, and they owned all the motorway service stations in Germany. they weren't really interested in the music business. They were interested in asset stripping, I suppose.
Yeah.
Making, anyway, it came to a point where there's one guy who was a terra firma guy who was in the EMI called David Kessler, who I got on very well with, actually. And we kind of talked about how it was going, and we both agreed that it wasn't about, by that time, the EMI was not a really good place for Mute to be for lots of different reasons. And so we did the kind of, I did an exit strategy with him.
Right.
But I didn't, but they still owned the catalogue.
Right.
So I didn't buy, I wanted to buy the catalogue at a certain point, but I tried to buy it off Universal because EMI sold to Universal. I don't know how interesting this is all for your podcast.
It's very interesting because I've got loads of musicians talking about their shit, but it's very rare you get to talk to somebody who I respect so much in the music industry to explain how it works.
So basically, just after I left EMI, or we left EMI, so the idea was, we're leaving EMI. We don't have a catalogue at all because they own the catalogue. They had some of the bigger artists like Depeche. They had them on a slightly, and Richard Hawley actually had them on a longer contract because they paid them a lot of money, and they stayed. I left with my team, which was by that time much smaller.
Yeah.
And a lot of the artists came with me who could come with me.
Cool. So it's quite tangled then, wasn't it? But I think you still got an amazing result out of it.
Yeah, and the money that the EMI paid me for Mute, I put back into restarting it because we were starting from scratch. Not every penny, but a lot of that went back into restarting Mute. So. And then we built up the catalogue. EMI got sold to Universal.
Oh, join the club, mate.
I tried.
All my back catalogue's on Universal now. I hate it.
I tried to buy the catalogue. They wanted to sell the Mute catalogue, and I wanted to buy it. But then, and I offered them what I thought was a lot of money. Then BMG stepped in, and they were, when BMG restarted, they were in catalog acquisition, overdrive, and they paid a lot of money for it. They paid much more than I could afford. To EMI, so they've got the catalog.
Right. Okay. Well, let's move on.
But just to finish that off.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the catalog was things that they were not really interested in.
Yeah.
They were interested in Depeche. Well, they didn't get Depeche. That's a whole other story. But they got Nick Cave, they got Moby, they got the old Goldfrapp catalogue, even though Goldfrapp stayed with us for the new, and they got the Erasure catalogue, and Erasure stayed with us. But there were a lot of other, great artists who were not necessarily viable commercially for them.
Yeah, yeah.
For Fad Gadget or Night Arab or, some of the Wire catalogue and so forth that we had. So we licensed that back from BMG. So we're still releasing a lot of those records, but it's.
Oh, I love all this shit. That's great. Honestly, I've got.
But now but since I think 2010 we started up again.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's been really good, actually. I have to say, we're smaller. We had to get smaller at that point and it feels really good.
Well, physical distribution isn't so much of a thing now, is it? Anyway, so.
Well, it is for us, actually.
Is it?
Vinyl is really, for quite a lot of our artists, is very, very important.
Right. I mean, we're all into the special edition thing, aren't we? We did with Illustrious. You kindly agreed to put out the 10 CD set, limited edition, and we all made a bit of money out of that. But actually, it's going for quite a lot more on eBay now, I'm glad to say. It's the idea, isn't it? Let's invest.
For Erasure band, artists like Erasure or Liars, or trying to think, a lot of the artists have a huge vinyl fan base, because I think artists with really strong, loyal fan bases, they want
they want the artist. And
artists who have a longer career, their fans go back and they're older now and they still want the physical thing. They want they want to be able to touch it and feel it. And we like to do good quality pressings and good packaging and things. So it makes it Anyway, so yeah, physical distribution is very important.
Anyway, that is really, I mean, I know it might seem esoteric to some people listening, but I find it fascinating. Anyway, and if I find it fascinating, it's my fucking podcast. So you're going to have to listen to it until we get to the good stuff.
That's what you should have called it, my fucking podcast.
Well, you get more listeners. Actually, we're doing well. What was I going to say? So, it was number 13 in Apple Podcasts for music last week. Considering we've only been going for like 10 weeks, I think it's quite good. What was I going to say? Right, so let's go back to when you first started. And, you know, there's a whole bunch of people who I'm still friends with, most of them. And it's like a kind of secret. It's like the synthetic Illuminati. The people who are good people and who had in their heart a kind of futurist kind of attitude.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting a lot of them to do the podcast, to be honest. All seem to continue to do well, apart from the ones who are dead, of course. I mean, but, you know, obviously you started off early doors working with people like Throbbing Gristle and the Cabs, and you've done stuff with them, and, you know, all the really credible stuff. You're like this is how I view you. I think it's like you're a touchstone for credibility in this field. And I think that's a really rare thing. And you're very self-effacing. I don't know, maybe you're not now. Maybe you're a big head. I don't know.
No, well, I hope I'm not.
No, you're not. You're not.
I'm the greatest, yeah.
You're the greatest, I think.
I'm the touchstone. I am the touchstone, yeah.
You can use any of these, you know. I'm not charging
you very much.
In fact, I'm just going to write down. I was writing some notes down. And first of all, I want to tell you that Warm Leatherette is definitely in my top 5 singles of all time. I just think it's a piece of crystalline genius. I think it's beautiful. And I know it's simple. I didn't realise until I looked it up that was the Korg 700S. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. It was all done with the Korg 700S, yeah.
Well, I've got one right next to me here.
I love it.
They're just amazing, aren't they? Yeah. It's the filters and everything. But to me, I listened back to that record, and listeners, if you've never heard Warm Leatherette, you will have done, but if you haven't, you should go and listen to it. I wouldn't have identified it as a Korg 700S. It's got a different kind of tone to it. I thought it might have been I think it sounds European, actually, if anything.
I mean, it's funny you should say that, because I had to do a talk a while ago somewhere, I can't remember where it was now, Switzerland, and about music and technology and stuff. And the guy who was running the talk had a Korg 700S. Wow. And he said, "Oh, I'll bring it along and you can show us some sound." I said, "Great, fine, no problem, I have fun." And it sounded really different from mine.
Interesting.
So mine might have been broken. There's also the other thing is I did it on a 4-track TIAC, 7.5 IPS.
Oh, right.
And
save money on tape, right?
Yeah, and the tape, I think I used second-hand tape, or there was a problem with the heads, and all the oxide was coming off on the heads, and I had to, while I was mixing it, which I hardly mixed it, but I had to keep my finger on the
really
push the tape up to the heads, because that maybe has something to do with the sound. I don't know, but
it's really interesting. It's got a slightly. This is meant to be an insult because I've told you how much I love it. It's got a slightly thinner sound than you'd expect. It's got bottom end, but there's something. Anyway, you know, this is all technical shit. But anyway, I still love the.
But it's funny because just on that note, I remember because that's fairly early on after I released that. I got to know a guy called Robert Rental.
Yes, Robert. Yeah,
who was another kind of home recording. And we did some gigs together as a duo together, and I remember one of the early gigs. Somebody came up to me after the gig and said, "Your production is shit. You should listen to Being Boiled by Houston."
Well, we had one up on, and we only had 2 tracks. No, that was the original Being Boiled. By the time we got to Travelogue, it was multi.
But there was he was talking about
they were talking about the original.
Yeah.
That literally was sound on sound. And
really, I mean, they sounded great. I thought that sounded really good, and I loved that when it came out.
Yeah. Thank you. It was quite an achievement. We didn't think anybody else would like it. It was only.
Well, that's what I thought as well. I thought I'd press 500, which is the minimum, and they'd stay. I'd give them to a few friends and family, and that would be it.
Yeah. But the thing is, with that period of time, I was going to ask you about this as well, because there's always been a very strong graphic design core to Mute Records, and what you've done as well, TVOD and all that, and all that stuff. It all feels like it's from that. It's being considered very, very heavily, and it's quite Bauhaus, and not the group Bauhaus. I'm kind of that kind of thing. And I, before I started the Human League, we were all making fanzines and stuff.
Okay.
And experimenting with putting stuff together. And of course, the Leatherette thing on Being Boiled is.
Yeah.
Now, it's so funny. In the Royal College of Art, somebody contacted me the other day and said, do you realise that you're like one of the lessoners? I mean, this is a kid who I can't draw for toffee, and I never finished school or anything. Like they went through some of our early graphics, especially the Being Boiled sleeve at the Royal College of Art, and I'm going, this is just ironic, isn't it? But don't. Anyway, the point being, I think, we process visually in a different part of the brain to the auditory. I think the kind of visual imagination that was encouraged at that time with punk had an influence also on the music. What do you think?
Yeah, because everything was homemade.
Yeah,
and I mean, not all punk was homemade, obviously, but the punk aesthetic, the punk movement, rather than the punk rock, should we say?
Yeah,
because punk was still rock. Let's face it.
Yeah,
but but the punk movement was all very homemade and cut ups and Leatherette and because that's the resources everybody had. Pair of scissors, some Leatherette, and the photocopying machine that they, and it was very inspiring because it was very liberating, because you could make a great looking fanzine or you could make a good sounding record at home with very, very limited resources, and it was an explosion of imagination. There was a lot of people, I mean, from a music point of view, I could not have made that record at any other time.
We've been boiled, I think. I
think what's interesting is that, and maybe you're going to come onto this later, but there are all these things happening at different parts of the country, completely unconnected from each other, coming from a very similar place. I mean, I don't know how connected you were with the Cabs in Sheffield, and
very connected. They were our mentors, basically.
Yeah. So you lot were. No, but I didn't know anybody, and there were other people, like the OMD guys, and everybody was working. It was kind of a real moment, a special, very particular moment in history. I think that could have only, that explosion in a way could really only have happened at that time. I think.
Yes,
that's my theory.
Also the independent label thing was very important, because of course there are independent labels now. And there are small independent labels now, but this was a new thing back then. People don't really understand. Everybody goes Sex Pistols, the Damned, whatever. But the point is, particularly people like the Damned, for instance, and say the Fast Product stuff that went on up there, and all that sort of stuff, would never have happened were it not for this newfound confidence that you could have your own label,
Yeah.
And you came from that,
Yeah, because people's minds were opened up, and I think there was punk. There was like a very specific kind of timeline. Really, there was punk, and everybody got very excited, including me, about the energy of it and everything. And soon after that, I mean, of course, like there were two attitudes to punk. Right, one was the Malcolm McLaren, Rhodes attitude: screw the majors for as much as you can.
Yeah.
And which they did very successfully. Or the other side of it, which was like, do it yourself with no money. It was kind of very, and I was obviously I didn't want to sign to a record label. I didn't even think of signing to a record label, but what I wanted to do is do the process myself. And, there were a few people. There was a band called the Desperate Bicycles. I don't know if you remember them.
I know the name, but I don't know of them.
They're musically very different, but they wrote a little manual about how to make your own record.
Right.
And I think they put it was in Rough Trade, or it was printed in the Melody Maker or something like that. And it was so simple. And because I'd been working before that, up to that point, I'd been working as a film editor or assistant film editor. And I realized that a lot of the processes that were used in film were very similar to that used in the physical production of a record. So I didn't find that very difficult. So it's funny because nowadays, I'm not saying the good old days, but nowadays people talk about bedroom recordings as some kind of new thing, or self-released records or something new thing, But obviously it was going a long time ago.
I've got a very interesting. I mean, I just did an interview with Gary Newman yesterday, which is interesting, different vibe completely. I've never met Gary Newman in 40-odd years since in my career, which is bizarre, frankly. And I always had a bit of a grudge against the fact that they kind of strode straight through, went to number one. We kicked open the door a bit, and they just walked straight through, right? Frighteningly, I don't agree with his politics at all. I don't know where he stands on that now, but he was a Thatcher supporter. And that's probably why I never made an effort. But I found him incredibly agreeable, and the stories that he was telling about how he started and how he discovered electronic music was incredible. He literally went into the studio to do a punk rock record. There happened to be a Mini Moog there. He had an epiphany when he hit one key in the studio and went to the rest of the band. He'd only just joined the band, and he said, right, this is the future. We're going to chuck all those arrangements out. And the band went, what? And he had to fight tooth and nail for the record. I think it was Beggar's Banquet to put it out. Yeah. And next thing you know, it's number one. So people come to electronic music in different ways. Were you a big science fiction fan? He was at that point. For instance, I was. And did that influence your? Obviously, you like Crash and J.G. Ballard, like we did.
I was into kind of J.G. Ballard kind of science fiction rather than the sort of kind of what I would call. I don't know if it's a good description, but near future science fiction.
Yeah, discuss this. It's more like social future fiction.
Yeah.
Or imagining different futures that's not involved with kind of four-headed aliens and anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was that moment, wasn't it, when, like, Kraftwerk merged, people like Can and Kraftwerk and Neu and all those bands were very influential on punk,
Very.
I mean, and Johnny Rotten when he left, John Lydon when he left the Sex Pistols wanted to join Can, so, and The Fall did Damo Suzuki track. I mean, it was well in the Buzzcocks, so it's that influence of what they call the hate term krautrock.
Yeah.
The kind of explosion of punk and the DIY possibilities and cheap synthesizers all kind of happened at the same time.
That's right. And also, the kind of fallout from disco as well, because a lot of people like us, and certainly a lot of other people, wanted to go clubbing. The discos all had kind of, post-punk nights or electro-futurist nights or whatever. And so there was a demand for content for those sort of things for the first time. It was interesting as well.
That's true.
And so I think disco had quite an interesting fallout because everybody regards it as kind of gay and black, and it did originate that way. But that's why it led. Oh, you got the perfect kind of confluence of kind of Giorgio Moroder stuff, for me anyway. And tell us about your studio, because I've only ever been once to it, and I was just going, oh fucking hell! You know, I mean, I don't really keep synthesizers. I used to have to sell mine to get the next one along. But of course, I've still got some vintage. I've got the System 100 here and all that stuff. Right. But tell me about your studio. I mean, how many synths do you have? Is it really extensive nowadays?
Well, okay. First of all, this sounds a bit pompous. I've got essentially 3 studios. Well, which is not really. I mean, I've got. Well, there's one proper studio, what I call which is at Mute,
right? Which
is actually in the building at Mute. It's got quite a lot of my old synths in there, more of the keyboard orientated synths like the Mini Moog and MS-20 and things like that.
Right.
And that's used. I don't really use that studio much, except for working on other people's records. Then there's my London studio.
Oh, darling.
Yeah, there's one's London studio, which was my main studio, my main kind of personal workspace for many, many years, which has got a lot of unbelievably beautiful instruments in it.
Right. The fetish, right?
Sorry,
the fetish stuff like butlers and
well, I haven't got a boot.
Oh, right.
But there was a point, and you will remember this very well, I'm sure, around the time the DX7 was released in '83.
Yeah.
And digital music started to be kind of more accessible. People just want to get rid of all their old analog stuff because it was unreliable. You couldn't keep it in tune. You could only play one note at a time on most of it.
Yeah.
You know, why do you want to keep that when you can get a perfect funky bass sound on a DX7, which I did personally hate it, but that's
me too. Yeah.
And you could pick up. Ridiculously inexpensive, very rare modular synths.
What's your favourite one?
Oh, favourites. Oh, well, I suppose the one that I'm most proud of is my EMS Synthi 100.
Oh, shut up! I want one of those. I love
which. You'll hate this. You'll hate me even more when I tell you the story.
Go on. Had it. No.
Sorry, no. It belonged to the University of East Anglia Electronic Music Department, and they were chucking it out basically because they'd replaced everything with computers.
Right.
And it's a huge, complicated to use and complicated to fix machine, and I think they just wanted to get rid of it. And the guy I knew somebody there. He said, "Hey, do you want to pick this up?" And I said, "Yes." Yeah. "Oh, yeah, give them 500 quid and you can have it, as long as you take it away yourself."
Shit. I'm so
and that's super rare.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful, and it's not just that it's rare, but it is a beautiful. It's just like a beautiful piece of art.
Yeah.
And it works pretty well. The bits, it's a bit, but it works, and God, and so I never bought, except for one thing, I never bought something when it was a collector's item, if you know what I mean.
Right. Buy low, sell high. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't sell stuff. I mean, I don't, because I just move it around from one studio to another,
Yeah.
Actually, that's on an equal level of the other thing that I'm really proud of owning, or, privileged to be owning, I should say, probably, is Kraftwerk's original vocoder.
Oh my God.
Which was one they used on Ralph and Florian, the album.
Ralph, yes. Love that album.
And it's a one-off. They had it specially made. They had it commissioned.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work, but I'm envious nevertheless.
Anyway,
provenance of that.
That's like if having Jimi Hendrix's Stratocaster.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what. But so.
Yeah. Sorry, I was doing an interview with Martin Fry the other day.
Oh yeah.
And I was asking him a similar question, even though they weren't so much of an electronic act, but they did use so. They did at one point. And I said,
what they were called? What were they called before?
Vice versa, yeah.
Vice versa, yeah.
Yeah. They did that, and I said to him, what's your favourite synth? And he said, I don't know, there's so many. I like a lot of them. Maybe we should. This was his idea, and I really like it. I've nicked it now. Maybe we should do a. Maybe we should do a special episode of the podcast, which is called 7 Deadly Synths. That's so much Fry in it. He's so good with puns. And so I'm going to do it. And I've actually sent an email to Vince yesterday saying, would you be up for it? And if he's not, I'm going to ring you up and ask you if you'll do it. Because you both got equal amounts of synths, probably. I don't know. He's gone.
No. He's way beyond.
He's got doubles of everything, pretty much, as well.
He's got his collection, or I don't call it collection. He uses them. It's not like some kind of, he uses them all.
Yeah,
he's got some great, amazing stuff. And in but just to finish about my 3 studios, one's 3 studios.
Yeah.
So about 10 years, or roughly 10 years ago, I bought a flat in Berlin because I spend a lot of time here anyway. I love it here, and I'm in Berlin right now. And so I thought I should start a little. No, it's not a studio. It's like I'm sitting in it now. It's
looks good to me. Oh, I thought some modular stuff going on there.
And tragically, I got involved with Eurorack.
Oh no, really? That you can pour a lot of money into that shit.
And I've been and so the studio here is basically a Eurorack studio.
Yeah,
which I love as well. I love the idea of it as well. I think it's a brilliant format.
Yeah, I went to there's a big synth conference in Sheffield. Can't remember what's it called now. It's run by Sound on Sound anyway.
Okay.
And it's lots of kind of panels and workshops, and all the major manufacturers have stores and they show their latest stuff and whatever. But the one thing that always draws the biggest crowd is Eurorack stuff, and the kind of more kind of edgy stuff. Everybody's looking for it's like looking for kind of jewels in a Pokemon game or something. But I think you can spend a lot of money on that shit, and you can get such an enormously complex system that you wonder what to do with it in the end.
Well, it is. There's a famous T-shirt that people wear. So I got into Eurorack. I stopped making music.
No.
But I love it because I'm not trying to make records, although I've done bits and pieces, but I use it more almost like a therapeutic.
Yeah.
It is. I find it very therapeutic, especially. I've been here now for a year, as I said, and I've been using it a lot, and it's really helped me, I think, to just kind of calm down.
If I didn't have my studio, I'd have gone mad, I think, during lockdown. It's been my sanctuary, I think. Not just for making music, but for just peace, and ignoring the outside world. I'm probably like you. I've got no windows in my studio at all. There's no clocks or anything. It's like an old 70s studio, I love that shit. Anyway, moving on. Yeah. Any unfulfilled project ideas? Mine. I'll give you an example. Mine. Nobody's ever asked me to do a full feature film, for instance, and I'd love to have a crack at that.
Okay. Not really. I suppose my idea is to be able to spend more and more time playing in my studio, right. Just because I love it so much. We're just about to release Gareth Jones and I. Gareth, who's
Gareth, old friend,
producing of Depeche Mode and many, many other projects. We always used to jam, and we finally made a record together.
Wow!
Which is coming out in May, I think.
Is this a plug? Wow!
It's a plug. It's a plug. It's improvised. We're both into modular. It's kind of improvised electronic music. That's what it is.
I did Have you? Wow. I mean, I've never been massive on improvisation, but I did do the first ever properly multiplayer improvised record I did with some people from the BBC Radiophonic Workshop about 3 or 4 years ago. And it was literally, we went into the studio with no ideas, none, and just some synths. And we went, right, let's just mess about and see what comes out of it. And when we were doing it, I felt excruciatingly embarrassed because I thought, this is a load of wank. It really isn't. I don't know if it's working. So you're monitoring on headphones and the balance isn't right. We went into the studio at the end, listened to it on proper speakers, and with a minimum amount of polishing up, certain bits of it sounded absolutely inspired, transcendental, you know. Yeah. So we edited those bits together and put it out. It's called Burials in Several Earths.
Oh,
yeah, it's really some of it, and it was completely spontaneous. And I thought, fucking hell, it's like what it's like being a jazz player or something. And I'm not really a musician in that sense, but I am really in some ways.
Yeah, I mean it was a lot of fun doing this record. We exactly the same. We went, we met. We're both pretty busy, so we met for a couple of hours over a night, over like a 2-month period. Just plugged our modulars in and started playing. We didn't even, the only thing we did was clock ourselves and tuned up. But apart from that, we didn't talk about it at all beforehand. We just started.
Were you synchronized? I mean, it was everything in time with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a mutual clock. Either I sent him a clock or he sent me a clock. But not everything is clocked. But that we just had that.
Oh, aleatoric, darling. Yes.
Yeah, so,
I know all these terms now. I'm teaching. What was I going to say? So, is German techno still the future? I remember having an argument with you about this, I don't know, 15 years ago, because you were going, techno, and I'm going, yeah, it's good, but it's got its limitations. Do you think it's evolved to the point that you thought it was going to?
I think the thing about techno that I like, and it's still very popular all over the world. I actually had a resurgence in the last few years. God knows what people are going to be dancing to after lockdown. That's a whole different question, They'll
have forgotten.
The thing I like about techno, I like a lot about techno, but the thing about it is that it's, first of all, it has to be functional. In the sense you have to be able to dance to it, okay? And of course there's different kinds of techno, but the kind of techno that I like, it's usually only got about 3, kick drum and a hi-hat, very rarely a snare drum, and some percussion. There's almost nothing going on because because in those big clubs you just need a lot of space for the music,
Right.
And so within the sort of parameters of what I would call techno, a lot of people would call techno, you will have to work within those parameters somehow. And what is amazing to me is that how the music has moved on, working with very strict parameters. So there's these kind of limited, some people call them limitations about what you can do and what you can't do. And I think that's very inspiring because you're pushing every small element that you're using to its absolute maximum, and to come up with things that are original or new or that excite people. I think within those strict parameters, I think it's very exciting.
Yeah, interesting. I'll tell you one thing I think is, and it's a well-trodden path, this, but, a lot of students that I deal with are absolutely bamboozled by the amount of choice they have in terms of sounds and virtual synths, just too many options.
Yeah.
And so what happens is they all tend to aim in a direction of something that's already successful, sound-wise, and I think that's really destructive. It's an unintended consequence of the freedom of choice.
I know, so it's almost, it's like careful what you wish for in a way, isn't it? When you're starting. I don't know, I'm sure you had a similar, when I was starting out, part of it was evangelism in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And also you had to create your own sounds, which you don't.
Oh, yeah. I'm still anti-preset, still hate preset.
Anti-preset, yeah, the anti-preset. Power to the people. Yeah. Okay, I've written some words down here about you. I said a daring curator, and you're an animateur and a provocateur and an entrepreneur. All the ers, basically.
I do say a lot, especially
impresario, that's not an but
impresario.
And I said the Diaghilev of the electronic scene. I think that's quite good. You can have that for nothing, in fact.
Very much.
Yeah. You kind of make things, not just because you sign people up and put records out, but you are a nucleation site for creativity. And that is a rare thing in a record label, let alone as an individual. So I'm just blowing smoke up your ass while I figure out what to ask you next. Hold on a sec. So, what's the mute? Oh yeah, you put the mute book out, didn't you? How did that do?
Good. I mean, we were actually approached to do it. It wasn't our idea.
Who were the publishers?
It was Thames and Hudson.
Oh, I see. Excuse me.
Who do really nice
yeah
art books, and they approached us to say, would we like to do an art, like an art book about mute, or using a lot of the art from day one to that present day. And a few people have approached me in the past about, we want to do a mute book, like a written.
Yeah.
I've never really fancied that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I thought that would be really good. That was a nice idea, and so it took a long time to get off the ground. But they were great to work with, Thames and Hudson. They did a lot of the actual work. I mean, we did we found the stuff and we said they'd be like this and that. But they did a really good job of editing it and photographing all the old artwork and everything like that.
Great.
I think it did pretty well.
Those things are never really, unless you get really lucky, they're not about making money. It's about nailing your legacy, isn't it, really, I suppose?
But one of the nice things is that more and more independent record shops, or not just independent record shops, also sell books.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
And so it did quite well in those shops and the mute fans and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I was really proud of it. I was really, really pleased the way it turned out.
Yeah. So we put out some albums, didn't we? Me and Vince did a couple of albums together under the name Clark and Ware Experiment.
Yeah.
And when we started first doing 3D sound stuff and then put it down into binaural so you could hear things on headphones, I think they were pretty good, weren't they, those albums? Looking back on them now, they stand the test of time. But one thing I think is really funny is we were talking about the title of the first album, Pretentious. And I remember having a discussion with you saying, but it's not, you said it's not pretentious. I said, I know, but we're being ironic, Daniel. He said, but you shouldn't put yourself down. But I'm saying we're not putting ourselves down.
Did I really say that at the time? Okay. Because that was the kind of title that would have normally appealed to me. So
that's what I thought. And I thought it's very, very Vince as well. Vince is very like, I'm a man of the people, and like, because he always used to accuse me of, in a playful way, not accuse. He always used to rib me that, he let me create all the titles for that album because he said, oh, you do it, Martin. You're much better at this stuff than me. You're much more pretentious than me. And that's where the title came from.
Okay.
And he was only teasing, but, anyway. So, yeah, we did that. And you very kindly agreed to do some 3D packaging, which I don't have a copy of that anymore, unfortunately. I spent ages on paper engineers trying to figure out how to make a cube out of a CD cover. I remember that.
You've got any left, but I can check.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I must have accidentally given it away. So anyway, we did that, and we did Spectrum Pursuit Vehicle, which is a beautiful piece of work. And I think, I know I'm saying it myself, but I think we're very proud of it, both myself and Vince. And people still refer to that in particular as being a really beautiful and atmospheric. And it really fulfills the function of an ambient album. It's something you could have on, listening to it under your pillow at night and and stuff like that, I think. And thank you very much for letting us put it out. But most of all, thank you for, as I mentioned earlier, letting us put out the 10 CD special edition, which is now incredibly popular, I have to say. You should have kept some back, as usual. Anyway, I just want to finish on a couple of things. One is talking about I Say, which...
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've got a funny story about that.
Go on, tell me. What's the funny story?
But me and Vince, well, I remember we met in a pub. You and the guys from Erasure, we met in a pub. I'm not sure if Andy was there. I think he was there. Just because I'd never met him, I don't think, at that point.
I don't think I met Vince and Andy at that point.
Yeah.
It's weird.
So your name came up as a potential producer. I can't remember that process, and we thought that was a good idea, and so we had a chat in a pub, and we all got on very well, and it seemed like a good match, which it was. But I remember you kind of said, you said, okay, let's do it, and
I know
we just laughed. Was it you on Being Bored?
Phil, it was Phil.
Phil, but we thought that was hilarious.
Okay, ready, let's do it.
Yeah.
It's a bit like something from a Thunderbirds or Go or something. It's like a catchphrase. I was thrilled to do that album. That entire process of making that album was probably the best experience I had as a producer with anybody I worked with. Because I tell you why, it's interesting. Of course, Vince is very certain of what he does and how he does it, and so there's nothing fluffy about what Vince does. He knows what he likes. He knows how to do it. He knows how to manifest it. But he's also incredibly generous about letting other people contribute ideas. Hence, Andy goes away and does a lot of the top lines and writes quite a lot of the lyrics. And then Vince will tweak them, of course, and all that stuff. But this kind of generosity of spirit thing even stretched to you, because I remember when we first presented the mixers, I generally, when I produce things, I have a kind of condition when we start that people let us get on with it, and basically they get the chance to pass comment when we've done the first pass, and then we adjust it rather than interfere from an early. And you stuck to that, but you are just as good a producer as I am, and the combination of your final notes and changes really pushed that, as far as I'm concerned. I want to give you credit for that. Pushed it on another level, particularly Always, which did really well.
Yeah, that had it. We started there because they'd been in a bit of a lull at that point, and then that track really hit. That was an important track for them.
It was, and also the other thing that I didn't expect at all is if I'm right, I think I'm right in saying it did better than expected in America as well, didn't it?
Yeah, well, I remember I think Depeche were on tour in America at that time. And I didn't join a tour, but I'd pop in and out. I went with them for a few days. I remember we went out every night afterwards, and everywhere was playing Always.
Yeah, really?
In the clubs, and there's always been this friendly banter between Vince and Depeche. I mean, they're friends,
Yeah.
They don't hang out, but obviously Vince and Martin made that record together, which was great. ECM. So in Erasure, why are they playing that?
Exactly.
It's all in good humour.
Always is just a beautiful song, beautiful arrangement, and I think between us, we all did a really good job of the mix as well. So it sounded great on the radio.
Yeah, I know.
And, a lot. I have a look at the Erasure information service quite a lot, and the various Facebook sites and what have you. And it comes up, it rates very highly in their all-time singles. Anyway.
Nice.
So I'm proud of that.
Musically, it does too. It's not just like it is one of their best.
Yeah, I think so. Right, we're getting close to the end of this. So at the end of all these, I do a kind of smash hits type thing where I ask you not your favourite colour. I've already asked you your favourite synth, so I'm going to ask you your favourite book.
Ever?
Well, no, it can be one of them. I'm not, it's a tough ask when you don't give any advance warning. But I like the spontaneous thing.
Yeah, I mean, regrettably, I don't read anywhere near as much as I would like to, just because there's, so many other things I want to do. I have to say that the number of J.G. Ballard books are still some of my favourite books, no question. Yeah. What have I read recently? I read the Owen Jones book. I thought that was really good. I don't always agree with him.
No, I don't.
About the Labour Party, I was very. I'm more into political stuff. I read a lot of political websites and podcasts and stuff.
Yeah, me too.
I kind of think, why am I listening to this? It just makes me angry, and there's nothing I can fucking do about it. Or am I reading?
This is true. I nearly stood as an MP 3 years ago, and I had to go away for a week and think very carefully about what the consequences would be. And I realised that if I was going to do it properly, then I would have to give up music in reality, properly. Yeah. And I didn't want to do that, so I backed away at the last minute. But it was something I was considering doing, yeah. Because I was so enthused by the whole Corbyn project and moving on that, and then the whole thing got nixed by the media. Anyway, let's not dwell on such things. Favourite film?
I mean, there's two things. When you talk about favourite books, favourite films, favourite records, favourite synths, there's two aspects to it. One is which you have to balance out. One is which films had the most impact on me.
Yeah, all right. Let's say that then.
I think it was Exterminating Angel, Louis Buñuel.
Wow.
Okay. I saw it. It happened to be. It probably would have been any of the Buñuel films. But yeah. It happened to be the first one that I saw.
Was that at art college?
Yeah, or around the time I was going to art. Yeah, around that time I was like I was watch as many films as I could, or I can't remember if it was either the beginning of art college or just before, or whatever.
Yeah.
And it changed my whole perspective of how to, how you could do, of expression, I think.
Wow.
And
what a tip! I love that.
And so that was, whether it's my favourite ever film, I can't say.
No, it doesn't matter. That is the best story. Yeah.
It's definitely the one that pushed me kind of over the edge of way of thinking, I think.
Yeah. Okay, related to that in a way, what's your favourite? Right, not favourite. If there was one epiphanal moment in your life, one moment that kind of shifted your world on its axis, for any reason, good or bad, can you share that with us?
I mean, anything. It could
be personal, it could be creative, could be. Some people have said, and fuck you, I have to tell you this. Sorry, I just did Gary Newman yesterday. Said, and I thought, he's going to say, when he married his wife or something. He said, no, I was flying a twin-engine plane over the Pacific with my friend, doing a circumnavigation of the globe, when both engines packed up. And he said, in the 10 minutes it would take for me to hit the ocean, and probably beaten by sharks even if I survived, I decided I was willing to kill the other person to get the only dinghy. And I thought, okay, I don't think you can compete with that one.
No, I definitely can't. There haven't, I think there are a lot of, in terms of, I think a lot of things, it's hard to say because I see it more as rather than one epiphany, like an evolution of epiphanies, or, I could say the first time I heard the Beatles.
Right.
On a musical level.
Which period of the Beatles?
Most of these things are musical or film orientated.
Right.
I grew up. I'm a bit older than you. I spent my entire teenage years literally in the 60s. So, my first Beatles record I heard was "Please Please Me," which was actually their second single.
Right.
And that just blew my mind. I was totally into music. I was, even then I was like listening to anything, skiffle and bloody
Lonnie Donegan,
Johnny Duncan and the Bluegrass all that stuff. When I was really, and I was, but it was a musical evolution. We went from like the Beatles, then I heard Can, and then I heard, but I think, Autobahn, I think it's from a musical point, probably changed my musical vision, not because I've been listening to a lot of electronic music, but that was like, I suppose it was like there was a lot of kind of Tangerine Dreamy, I used to love Klaus Schulze a lot.
Yeah.
Really, really great. Really, I mean, I listen to it now, I think, fucking hell, this is, this stuff done in the, early 70s is amazing.
Yeah.
It was kind of dreamy, cosmic, kind of droney. And Autobahn was something completely different. It was electronic pop, kind of.
Yes.
It was funny. It was very I was always into minimalistic stuff, that what I loved about Can when I first heard Can, which was before that.
Yeah, Can.
Just when American and English music was getting very pompous and pretentious. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah. Tremendous. And finally, what's your favourite other musician, musical artist, composer? I know you've already gone through a few there, but is there any one particular one that is like a continuous source of inspiration for you? There you go. That's a good way of putting it.
I suppose. I mean, it's hard to pin that down because there's a few,
Yeah.
But I probably would have to say Kraftwerk.
Yeah.
In terms of my own work.
Yeah.
They're in the sense of, invention, their vision, their humor, and that's one of the great things about. I like artists who have got a sense of humor. I think pretty much everybody on Mute, all the artists on Mute, whatever kind of music they make, however dark it is, they've all got a really good sense of humor, and that's somehow. I've been,
part of humanity. Yeah, got to be.
It is, yeah. But I suppose I'd have to say Kraftwerk.
Yeah.
But then, I'd also have to say Can. And I'd also...
You've mentioned Can more than any other group in this interview, I think.
Well, that's also partly because we've been working with their catalogue for a long time now, and I'm huge, hugely important. And Noy as well. I mean, Steve Reich.
I'm getting into Amon Duel, but I found them a bit too mysterious.
Now, I like the early Amon Duel. I used to really like. Actually, I've just ordered the first record again. Funny enough, but it's always hard to pin it down. I love Steve Reich. I love Repetition. I love all that phasing stuff and everything like that.
And Terry Riley and C and all that.
Philip Glass. All that kind of.
Oh no, I did an interview with Will Gregory the other day, and Adrian Ussey. Their Moog Ensemble thing. I did a thing with them in Hamburg, actually. It was really good in 3D.
They can play, Jesus.
Oh, my God. They inspire me,
Yeah.
I realised how much stuff Will had done. I didn't realise he started with Tears for Fears, more or less. Yeah. Anyway, what an immense pleasure it's been, Dan. I haven't seen you for ages and ages. And you never know, you might get an unexpected phone call about 7 Deadly Sins. If it doesn't respond.
I'm up for it. It's great. Thank you for inviting me to do this pub.
Oh, no, man. It's keeping me sane, so you're doing me a service. Thank you very much.
It's both sane, so thank you very much.
All right, man. Thank you. And I'll see you soon.
See you one day.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.